Ozzy Osbourne, leaves a letter to his family, hidden for decades. The world was still mourning the loss of Ozzy Osbourne when Sharon Osbourne made a discovery that would shake the very foundations of everything the family thought they knew about the Prince of Darkness. 3 weeks after Ozzy's passing on July 22, 2025, while going through his personal belongings in their Buckinghamshire estate, Sharon found a locked metal box hidden beneath the floorboards of his home studio. Inside was a collection of letters, photographs, and documents that Ozzy had been secretly compiling for over 30 years. The centerpiece was a 47-page handwritten letter addressed simply to "My beautiful family," a document so raw, so honest, and so shocking that it has forever changed how the world views the legendary Black Sabbath frontman. The letter, dated sporadically between 1994 and 2025, reveals that Ozzy had been documenting his deepest thoughts, darkest secrets, and most profound regrets throughout his career, intending for his family to discover his true feelings only after his death. What Sharon, Kelly, Jack, Amy, and his other children found was not the wild, unpredictable rock star the world knew, but a deeply troubled, profoundly loving man who had been carrying secrets that would have destroyed him if revealed during his lifetime. The discovery has sent shockwaves through the music industry and beyond, as fans and critics alike grapple with revelations that paint an entirely different picture of one of rock's most iconic figures. The letter begins with an apology so heartbreaking that Sharon reportedly couldn't read beyond the first page without breaking down in tears. "My darling Sharon, my precious children, if you are reading this, then I have finally found the peace that eluded me for so long in life. But before I could rest, I needed you to know the truth about who I really was. Not the character I played for the world, but the man who loved you more than his own life and failed you more times than I can count. What follows is a journey through decades of hidden pain, secret struggles, and a level of vulnerability that Ozzy never showed to anyone while he was alive. If you're as stunned by this revelation as we are, please hit that like button to show your support. This story gets even more incredible as we dive deeper into Ozzy's hidden truths. The most shocking revelation in the early pages of the letter concerns Ozzy's relationship with fame and how it nearly destroyed him long before anyone realized. "The world thinks I embraced the madness, that I loved being the Prince of Darkness, but the truth is I was terrified every single day. The first time I bit the head off that bat, I was so drunk I thought it was rubber. When I realized what I'd done, I was sick for days. But the crowd went wild, the press went crazy, and suddenly I was trapped in this persona that I couldn't escape. Every outrageous thing I did after that was because I thought it was expected of me, not because I wanted to do it." This admission contradicts decades of interviews and public statements, where Ozzy seemed to revel in his wild reputation. The letter reveals that many of Ozzy's most famous antics were performed while he was battling severe depression and anxiety, using alcohol and drugs not for recreation, but as the only way he could cope with the pressure of maintaining his public image. "There were nights when I would lock myself in hotel bathrooms and cry for hours before going on stage. The only way I could face those crowds was to get so wasted that I couldn't think about how scared I was. Sharon, you saved my life so many times, but you never knew that some of those accidents weren't accidents at all. I was trying to escape from a prison of my own making." The letter goes on to describe specific incidents where Ozzy's behavior was interpreted as wild partying, but was actually desperate attempts to cope with overwhelming psychological pressure. Perhaps even more devastating are Ozzy's confessions about his role as a father and husband during his darkest years. The letter contains detailed apologies to each of his children, acknowledging specific incidents and periods when his behavior caused lasting damage. To Kelly, he writes, "My beautiful daughter, I know you struggled with your weight and self-image for years, and I know it was partly because of me. When you were 12 and asked me if you were pretty, I was too drunk to answer properly. I just grunted and walked away. You needed your father to tell you that you were the most beautiful girl in the world, and instead you got a man who was too lost in his own demons to see the incredible young woman you were becoming. Every time you looked in the mirror and doubted yourself after that, it was my failure reflecting back at you." To Jack, the confessions are equally heartbreaking. "Son, you followed in my footsteps with the drinking and the drugs, and I know it's because you saw me using them to deal with everything. I should have been the one to teach you that there were other ways to handle pain, but instead I taught you that bottles and pills were the answer. When you went to rehab, I was proud of you for being stronger than I was, but I was also eaten alive by guilt because I knew I was the one who put you on that path. You had to learn how to be a man despite having me as an example, and the fact that you became such a good person is a testament to your strength, not my guidance. The letter reveals that Ozzy's relationship with his eldest daughter Amy, who famously chose not to participate in the Osbournes reality show, was far more complex than anyone knew. Amy, my wise daughter, you saw through everything from the beginning. You knew that the cameras and the fame were destroying our family, and you had the courage to say no. I was angry at you then because I thought you were being difficult, but now I realize you were trying to protect yourself from the madness that was consuming the rest of us. You were the only one who stayed true to yourself, and I should have listened to you. Instead, I let my ego and my need for validation convince me that putting our family dysfunction on television was somehow acceptable. The most explosive sections of the letter deal with secrets that Ozzy had kept even from Sharon. In 1997, during one of his supposed clean periods, Ozzy reveals that he had a relapse so severe that he disappeared for 6 days, telling Sharon he was visiting his mother in Birmingham. Instead, he had checked into a seedy motel in Los Angeles and gone on a bender that nearly killed him. I woke up in that filthy room with no memory of 3 days. There were empty bottles everywhere, drug paraphernalia I didn't even remember buying, and a note in my own handwriting that said, "This is how it ends." I don't know if I wrote that as a suicide note or a prophecy, but seeing those words in my own hand scared me so badly that I flushed everything down the toilet and drove straight home. I told you I had been helping Mum with some house repairs, and you believed me because you wanted to believe I was getting better. The letter also reveals that Ozzy had been secretly attending therapy sessions for over a decade before his Parkinson's diagnosis, something he had hidden even from his family because he was afraid it would damage his crazy image. I started seeing Dr. Richardson in 2010 because I was having panic attacks so severe that I couldn't leave the house. Sharon, you thought I was just being lazy or difficult, but the truth was I was agoraphobic. The thought of facing crowds, even small ones, would send me into a spiral of terror. Dr. Richardson helped me understand that decades of living as Ozzy the Madman had fractured my sense of self so completely that I didn't know who I really was anymore. I was paying for these sessions with cash from my personal account so they wouldn't show up on our joint statements. One of the most shocking revelations concerns a suicide attempt that Ozzy had never disclosed to anyone. In 2003, during the height of the Osbournes' popularity, Ozzy writes about a night when the pressure of constant filming and public scrutiny became unbearable. The cameras were everywhere. I couldn't have a private moment with my own family, and I felt like I was suffocating. Every conversation was being recorded. Every argument was entertainment for strangers, and I realized I had sold my family's privacy for money and fame. I went into the garage, started the car, and sat there with the engine running. I was ready to let the carbon monoxide take me away from all of it. But then I heard Kelly laughing at something on television inside the house, and I realized that my children still needed me, even if I was a mess. I turned off the car and went back inside, and nobody ever knew how close they came to losing me that night. The letter reveals extensive details about Ozzy's struggles with his identity beyond the public persona. I was born John Michael Osbourne, a working-class kid from Birmingham who loved music and wanted to make people happy. Somewhere along the way, John got lost, and Ozzy took over completely. There were years when I couldn't remember what John's opinions were about anything, because I had been playing Ozzy for so long. I would catch myself wondering what John would want for dinner, what John would think about a movie, what John's real laugh sounded like. I had become so disconnected from my authentic self that I felt like I was living someone else's life. Sometimes I would look in the mirror and not recognize the person staring back at me. The impact of fame on his mental health is described in devastating detail throughout the letter. People think being famous is wonderful, but they don't understand the isolation. I couldn't go anywhere without being recognized, couldn't have normal conversations because people only wanted to hear Ozzy stories, couldn't trust new people because I never knew if they wanted to be my friend or just wanted something from me. The loneliness was crushing, even when I was surrounded by thousands of screaming fans. Especially then, because I knew they were cheering for a character, not for the real me. I was performing 24 hours a day, and I was exhausted from it. Ozzy's letter also contains profound regrets about his relationship with his Black Sabbath bandmates, particularly Tony Iommi. Tony and I could have been best friends if I hadn't been so insecure and competitive. Every time he would suggest a musical direction, I would argue with him, not because I disagreed, but because I was afraid people would think he was the real creative force behind Sabbath. The truth is, Tony's musical genius combined with my voice and stage presence created something magical, but my ego and my addictions kept getting in the way of what could have been an even greater partnership. I was so threatened by his talent that I sabotaged our relationship repeatedly. The letter reveals that Ozzy had been working on making amends with estranged friends and colleagues for years before his death, often anonymously sending money to people he felt he had wronged during his darkest periods. There's a roadie named Jimmy who worked for us in the early 70s. During one of my worst binges, I accused him of stealing money from the tour bus. I fired him publicly, humiliated him in front of the crew, and ruined his reputation in the industry. 20 years later, I found out that our tour manager had been stealing the money and using Jimmy as a scapegoat. I tracked Jimmy down and discovered he had been struggling financially ever since, unable to get work because of what I had done to his reputation. I've been anonymously paying his rent and medical bills for 15 years, but I was too ashamed to face him and apologize properly. The most emotionally devastating sections of the letter focus on Ozzy's relationship with Sharon and his deep gratitude for her unwavering support, despite his countless failures. Sharon, you are the strongest person I have ever known, and you deserved so much better than what you got with me. You took a broken, drug-addled fool and somehow saw something worth saving. You stood by me through overdoses, arrests, public humiliations, and decades of erratic behavior that would have sent any sane woman running. You managed my career, raised our children, and held our family together while I was falling apart. I know I told you I loved you every day, but I don't think I ever properly conveyed how completely lost I would have been without you. You didn't just save my life, you gave it meaning. But fine, the letter also addresses Ozzy's fears about his legacy and how he wanted to be remembered. I'm terrified that history will remember me only as a sideshow freak, the man who bit heads off animals and pissed on the Alamo. But I hope that maybe, someday, people will also remember that I helped create a new form of music that gave voice to the anger and alienation that so many young people feel. Black Sabbath wasn't just about darkness and horror, it was about acknowledging that life can be brutal and unfair, and that sometimes you need heavy, aggressive music to help you process those feelings. I hope our music helped people feel less alone in their pain. Throughout the letter, Ozzy expresses amazement at his own survival and attributes it entirely to the love and support of his family. By all rights, I should have died a dozen times over. The amounts of drugs and alcohol I consumed should have killed me. The risks I took should have ended my life, and the depression I battled should have driven me to suicide. But every time I came close to the edge, one of you would pull me back. Kelly would call at just the right moment. Jack would need help with something. Amy would send a card. Or Sharon would look at me with those eyes that saw straight through to whatever was left of John underneath all the Ozzy nonsense. You were my lifeline when I was drowning. The letter contains detailed instructions for how Ozzy wanted his musical legacy to be handled after his death. I've been working on one final album that I want released only after I'm gone. It's called Letters to My Past, and it's the most honest music I've ever created. There are songs about my childhood, my regrets, my love for all of you, and my hopes for what comes after death. The recordings are in the safe behind the family photo in my studio. I want the proceeds from this album to go toward addiction treatment programs and mental health resources for musicians. Maybe my final work can help other people avoid the mistakes I made. One of the most surprising revelations in the letter is Ozzy's secret philanthropy, which he had been conducting anonymously for decades. I've been donating money to various charities and individuals for 30 years, but I never wanted it to be public because I was afraid people would think it was a publicity stunt. There's a scholarship fund at Birmingham University for working class kids who want to study music. I've been funding it since 1995. There's a treatment center in Los Angeles that I've been supporting since 2000. There are dozens of families of people who died from addiction-related causes who have been receiving anonymous help with funeral costs and support for their children. I wanted to do something positive with the money I made from music, even if nobody knew it was me. The letter also reveals Ozzy's spiritual journey. which was far more complex than his public persona suggested. People think I'm some kind of devil worshipper because of the Sabbath imagery and the Prince of Darkness nickname. But the truth is, I've been searching for God my whole life. The darkness in our music wasn't about celebrating evil. It was about crying out to God from the depths of despair. Some of my most powerful spiritual experiences happened on stage, when I felt connected to something bigger than myself through the music and the energy of the crowd. I may have been the Prince of Darkness, but I was always looking for the light. Ozzy's letter includes heartbreaking details about his struggle with Parkinson's disease and how it affected his sense of identity. When the diagnosis came, I felt like it was God's punishment for all the years I had abused my body. The tremors, the difficulty speaking, the loss of control, it felt like cosmic justice. But as the disease progressed, I realized it was also giving me a strange kind of freedom. I couldn't maintain the wild Ozzy persona anymore, so for the first time in decades, I had to just be John. It was terrifying, but also liberating. The disease stripped away everything I thought defined me and forced me to discover who I really was underneath it all. The letter describes in detail how Ozzy's relationship with each family member evolved as his condition worsened. "Kelly, you became my caregiver in ways I never expected. When my hands were too shaky to feed myself, you would help me without making me feel ashamed. When my voice was failing and I couldn't communicate clearly, you learned to understand my gestures and expressions. You showed me a level of patience and compassion that I didn't know I had raised you to have. Jack, you became the son I always hoped you would be, but was too broken to help you become. Your strength in overcoming your own addictions inspired me to keep fighting even when the Parkinson's made everything difficult." As the letter draws to a close, Ozzy's final messages to his family become increasingly emotional and profound. "Sharon, please don't spend the rest of your life grieving for me. You gave me 43 years of love that I didn't deserve, and now it's time for you to find happiness in whatever form that takes. You are still a beautiful, vibrant woman with so much to offer the world. Don't let my death define the rest of your life. Find someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved, someone who doesn't come with the baggage and complications that I brought to our marriage." To his children, he offers individual pieces of advice and wisdom. "Kelly, you have inherited my sensitivity and my artistic nature, but you also have your mother's strength and intelligence. Use that combination to create something beautiful in this world. Don't let my struggles with addiction and mental health discourage you from pursuing your own artistic dreams. You have so much to offer, and I hope you never doubt that. Jack, you have overcome challenges that would have destroyed a weaker person. Your resilience and humor are gifts that can help others who are struggling. Use your platform to help people the way I wish I had used mine. Amy, your independence and authenticity are your greatest strengths. Never compromise who you are for anyone or anything. You were right to step away from the circus, and I admire you for having the courage to live life on your own terms." The letter's final pages contain Ozzy's reflections on mortality and what he hoped to find after death. "I'm not afraid of dying anymore because I know that whatever comes next has to be more peaceful than what I've been carrying inside me for so long. If there is an afterlife, I hope I get to meet all the musicians who inspired me and tell them how much their art meant to a scared kid from Birmingham. If there's nothing after this, then at least I got to experience the incredible gift of making music with some of the most talented people who ever lived. And I got to love and be loved by the most amazing family anyone could ask for." The discovery of this letter has had profound effects on everyone who has read it. Sharon Osbourne released a statement saying, "This letter has helped me understand my husband in ways I never did while he was alive. It explains so many things that confused me over the years and shows me that the man I fell in love with was always there, even when he seemed lost. I'm sharing parts of this letter because I think it might help other families who are dealing with addiction, mental illness, and the pressures of public life. Ozzy's honesty in death might help people find healing in life." The Osbourne children have each spoken about how the letter has affected their understanding of their father. Kelly said, "Reading Dad's words about his struggles with identity and authenticity has helped me understand my own journey with self-acceptance. I realize now that some of his behavior that hurt me was actually him trying to protect me from his own pain. He was fighting battles I couldn't see, and knowing that helps me forgive both him and myself for the difficulties we went through." Jack added, This letter has given me closure on so many issues from my childhood. Understanding that Dad was fighting demons I couldn't see helps me appreciate how hard he was trying, even when it didn't seem like it. He may not have been perfect, but he was trying to be better than his own upbringing had prepared him to be. Music industry professionals and mental health experts have praised the letter for its brutal honesty about the dark side of fame and the importance of seeking help for mental health issues. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a psychiatrist who specializes in treating musicians, commented, "This letter is one of the most detailed accounts of how fame-related trauma can fracture a person's sense of self." Ozzy's description of losing touch with his authentic identity is something we see regularly in our practice, but rarely documented with such clarity and self-awareness. His willingness to share these struggles posthumously could help destigmatize mental health treatment for other performers. The letter has also sparked important conversations about the music industry's responsibility to support artists who are struggling with mental health and addiction issues. Several major labels have announced new programs to provide confidential counseling and support services for their artists, citing Ozzy's letter as inspiration for these initiatives. Record executives have acknowledged that the industry has historically exploited artists' personal struggles for commercial gain rather than providing proper support. Fans around the world have responded to the letter's revelations with a mixture of sadness, understanding, and appreciation for Ozzy's honesty. Many have shared their own stories of how his music helped them through difficult times, not realizing that he was fighting similar battles. The hashtag #RustThankYouJohn has been trending on social media, as fans express gratitude not just to Ozzy the performer, but to John Osbourne, the human being who suffered so much while bringing joy to others. The letter has also led to a re-evaluation of Ozzy's artistic legacy, with critics and scholars recognizing the depth of emotion and authenticity that was always present in his work, even when it was overshadowed by his wild public persona. Music historians are now examining his entire catalogue through the lens of his revealed struggles, finding new layers of meaning in songs that were previously dismissed as simple shock rock. The vulnerability and pain that he kept hidden during his life can now be heard clearly in the music he created. The impact of the letter extends beyond the music world into broader discussions about masculinity, vulnerability, and the importance of mental health awareness. Ozzy's willingness to admit fear, depression, and emotional pain has been particularly meaningful to male fans who have been conditioned to hide their own struggles. Mental health organizations have reported an increase in men seeking help after reading about Ozzy's experiences, citing his example as proof that seeking therapy is a sign of strength, not weakness. The revelation of Ozzy's secret charitable work has also inspired others to consider how they can use their resources to help those in need. Several tribute concerts are being planned, with proceeds going to the various causes that Ozzy supported anonymously during his lifetime. These events will celebrate not just his musical achievements, but his compassionate spirit that he kept hidden from the public eye. The Birmingham Music Foundation has announced plans to expand the scholarship program that Ozzy had been secretly funding, ensuring that his philanthropic legacy continues. Sharon Osbourne has announced that selected portions of the letter will be published in a book, with all proceeds going to mental health and addiction treatment programs. The book, tentatively titled Letters from the Darkness, Ozzy's Final Confessions, is expected to become one of the most important musical memoirs ever published, offering unprecedented insight into the mind of one of rock's most enigmatic figures. Publishers are calling it a potential game-changer in how celebrity memoirs are approached, with its unflinching honesty setting a new standard for posthumous revelations. The letter concludes with words that have become a rallying cry for anyone struggling with their own demons. To anyone who reads this and recognizes themselves in my struggles, please know that you are not alone. The darkness feels permanent when you're in it, but there is always light to be found in the love of family, the healing power of honest expression, and the simple act of refusing to give up. I may have been the Prince of Darkness, but I spent my whole life searching for the light, and I found it in the faces of the people who love me despite everything. Find your light, hold on to it, and never let go. Life is worth fighting for, even when it doesn't feel like it. If this incredible story of family love, hidden pain, and ultimate redemption has moved you as much as it has moved us, please show your support by hitting that like button. Ozzy Osbourne's legacy will forever be changed by this letter, transforming him from a larger-than-life rock star into a deeply human figure whose struggles and triumphs remind us all of the importance of love, forgiveness, and the courage to be authentic in a world that often demands we wear masks. The Prince of Darkness has finally stepped into the light, and his family's decision to share his most private thoughts ensures that his real story, not just the legend but the man, will inspire and comfort people for generations to come, proving that even in our darkest moments, love and honesty can illuminate the path toward healing and redemption.